Hey, what's up, everybody, ladies and gentlemen? This is your host
Nico.
and Irvin, and this is Shining Spotlight, the stream where we highlight creatives in the industry in order to inspire you guys. Today, we have an artist who's dedicated much of her time working on her craft, providing tips to artists and writers in the manga community on her YouTube channel. She is also the admin in the online manga group International Manga Society on Facebook and Young Anime Art Club on DeviantArt. Today, we welcome the serenely magical Midnight Cross. Thank you so much for coming on today. We really appreciate
Welcome.
it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so of course, you've been on the YouTube journey for I would say about 4 or 5 years, a little bit more than that or so now. But before that, I mean, obviously, you had been drawing for more than 10 years. Of course, and I've checked out one of your videos where you kind of showed, or a couple of your videos where you showed your progression as an artist, over time. So I'm really curious, aside from some of your influences, like I know you mentioned Rumiko Takahashi's Inuyasha as one of them, and then you also mentioned Peach and Pit's Shugo Chara as another one of your major influences. So, just tell us a little bit about your journey, like, going back to, like your childhood and, kind of where that started.
Well, I would say I've been drawing since I was a kid, like basically since I could pick up a pen or a pencil, I was drawing and writing and telling stories. And I think it's always been such a magical experience for me. But I think when it really came to anime and manga, that did really happen with Rumiko Takahashi's Inuyasha, like you said. I watched the anime of that and I just kind of fell in love with the artistic style and the storytelling, and it just made me see art and creativity in such a new way. So while I had been drawing and writing stories before that, when I learned about anime and manga, it kind of set me into this whole thing. That was when I was probably about 10 years old, maybe. Started watching anime and I started drawing those things. And then from there, I just got obsessed with anime and drawing anime and manga, and that's basically where I continued. But I have been drawing since I was a kid.
So was it mainly like anime and manga that inspired that journey, or was it a situation where did you ever have any other like artistic influences outside of like manga or anime that kind of also kind of propelled you forward?
well, when I was a kid, it was probably things like Barbie movies. That was my thing as a kid. But as a kid, I really liked all sorts of things. I remember drawing a lot of stuff with fairies or mermaids. But overall, when it came to actually finding a particular style, that was probably the first time I'd really seen such a strong style in anime and manga. So that's when I really started, mimicking those styles and trying to find my own style, because before that it wasn't really a thought about style or the techniques behind it. It was just kind of having fun and enjoying the experience.
Right. And obviously today we see slews of your videos on tutorials and how to do's, and even using some of the known words like Inuyasha themselves, to help break down the structure or what have you as far as writing is concerned. Let me so let me ask what I'm sure a lot of folks are curious about. Like, all right, so you started the interest 10 years old drawing. Where did you learn all this? Where did this all begin?
Where did I learn it all? It's really just been self practice. The major thing that I did since I was 10 is at that age, I usually got screenshots from things like Inuyasha, and then I just redraw that in my own style when I was young. And that's really where I learned a lot of the original techniques. But from there, I really just kept practicing and I focused a lot on the stuff I struggled with the most. And that's the same whether it is through the art or the writing as well. I would really just, the major thing I think for me is about having fun with it and enjoying it and not being too critical in the process. But when it came to the art, I would really just, rather than being critical in my approach, have fun with it and draw the stuff that I enjoyed. And from that age, from about, I think it was 10 to 13, before I was ever on social media, I would draw many things every single day. I would just draw and draw and draw because that was the thing I was obsessed with. And so I think through the process of me drawing so much, it ended up, I don't know, sorry, I lost my train of thought. It ended up
That's fine.
becoming something where I ended up gaining experience in that through me simply doing it a lot of times. That's the main thing I think I would say.
So, I mean, that was explaining the drawing bit, but I mean, I've got more questions with that. But leading into the writing bit, I mean, I see a lot of your videos, and what really like zeroed in with me is how you break down a lot to do with the actual story or the writers in of a lot of these plot lines, if you will. So I'm really curious, you know, when did you start being more writing savvy?
I guess again, when I was a kid, I was also really interested in writing and telling stories. So basically, what I would do is I would just get like a little exercise book and I would write the story and also draw some pictures. What's really interesting is as I got older to my younger teenage years, I became less interested in writing and I focused a lot on art. And in my very early YouTube days, all of it was speed drawing videos and art videos. And I really got started on DeviantArt, where I shared my art on that. But then
Oh yeah,
as I,
Deviant.
yes, yes. And as I then became older, I ended up becoming way more interested in writing, which was interesting. I went through a stage where I was more focused on the writing than I was with the artwork. And that was a similar approach to me with the art. I usually think of a character and a story, and I just really love bringing that story to life on the page and telling that story. And sometimes it feels like the characters themselves are the ones who are telling me the story, and I end up just writing the story. And
Now that means
that
you know
was,
your characters very well. Then yes.
oh, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So really quick, before we continue, there's a few comments that have come through, so I do want to address those comments, and also want to say if you're watching this video, you're just coming in, make sure you like this video. You know, of course, you know, always helps out the channel when you do that, and subscribe as well, and hit the bell so you get updates. But very quickly, first comment we got a hello from Isaac, the webcomic creator. Then we have another comment from Jeff Lilly. That's the journey of all artists. At some point, you realize that you're no longer imitating, but you have made your own style. For younger artists out there, this is a very important part of your development. Jeff also says another important point there: draw, write, practice your craft every single day. Isaac, the webcomic creator, I'm not a fan of drawing every day advice. I beat myself as when I don't draw as often as that. And then we have another one from Jeff Lilly. Then draw as often as you can. Set aside time for it. It's your craft and it requires discipline. Okay, okay. And then another one we have right here. Yo, Midnight Cross, let's go. Okay, all right. From Flint 4K. All right. Hey, what's up, Flint 4K? Okay, all right. Let's get back to it.
All right. So rolling back into it. So pretty much for most part, self-taught drawing and self-taught writer. Well, Matt, I mean, I think I was a good drawer, but I don't really think I was that good of a writer. So being self-taught, period. So let me ask you then. What was your works like as far as your freelance work when working with other people, or did you work on some other major projects?
For the most part, I really just enjoy working on stories on my own. I haven't really worked with many people so far, but I am open to doing that kind of thing. But mostly, I've really just been focusing on telling my own stories and having fun with the creative process.
Okay. All right. So, okay. Any?
So, what do you think about the? I'm curious, like the current state of like the OEL community. And I don't know how familiar you are with the term OEL, but I'm gonna assume that you are because I know you're familiar with and I feel like I'm disrespecting it right now because I'm drawing a blank. Queenie Chan. I apologize, Queen Chan, if you're listening out there, but I know you're familiar, with a lot of Queen Chan's work and everything. What do you think of like older OEL and like what people could consider newer OEL, or would be probably the stage that a lot of us, younger creators like yourself, myself, and all of us out there are coming into? How do you feel about the state of it?
I think it's really encouraging and exciting that it's becoming more and more popular. I think in the early stages, it was really starting to be introduced. And as Queenie Chan talked about in that video as well, especially in Australia, there's really not much mention of manga and comics and all that kind of thing. So I think it's honestly really exciting for the community that more original English stories are coming out and people are wanting to create more English manga. And overall, I think that's just really exciting, and I'm looking forward to seeing where exactly that goes in the future and what new creators and stories that will make. That's my thoughts on that.
Okay, so do you think that OEL is in current day? Do you feel like we're pushing the envelope that needs to be pushed, as opposed to maybe in the past? Do you think that, and what I mean by that, let me clarify my question a little bit more. One of the things that people say about like our current day of OEL is that we don't do much outside of like what would be is like exaggerated like fan fiction, in a lot of our stories. So do you think that, have there been any stories that you've seen out there from other creatives that are pushing that, but that are more so from our generation, if you get what I'm going with it?
Do you mean using common genres and then retelling those stories in English formats?
Yeah, well, really what I mean is like, okay, how could I put it? So a lot of the stories that come out nowadays, you have a lot of what do you call those, Nico? The like the fantasy help me out here, Nico. I'm trying to remember.
Talking about the isekais?
Yeah, the isekais. You have a lot of isekai anime. And while that might be a lot of that might be the major thing that you see a lot now, you have so many isekai coming out that you almost kind of wonder, okay, you guys are taking a lot of tropes from a lot of these stories, but are you actually telling something that is unique to you through that medium? So for example, are you having maybe you want to do an isekai, but are you telling, are you putting yourself into these characters, So I guess what I'm asking you is, do you know like any stories out there that you feel like, maybe even if they are using that as the medium, that are pushing the envelope because they're telling stories from within and not just taking a copy and paste of what they've seen? You get what I'm saying now? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, everyone's ideas, there will never be a 100% unique idea, but I think everyone should put their own spin and twist on certain ideas and try and portray those ideas in their own unique way. And even if that's about creating unique characters or presenting a story in a certain way, that can really change things. I don't think there's anything wrong with people getting ideas or inspiration from popular genres or even cliches, but I think it's really important for people to put their own spin and twist on those ideas and make it something that's unique to them. That's my thoughts. So if someone were looking at the isekai genre, for example, even if they're looking at common tropes or cliches, I think if they put their own unique spin and they tell that story in their own unique way, they can still create something that stands apart from other stories.
Interesting. Okay.
Fair point. I mean, then let's take it back to OEL. Then, do you think I mean, why do you think OEL has gotten more popular to talk about nowadays?
Yes, it definitely is more popular. I think it's more popular in America. I think in Australia it's still becoming more popular. Hopefully in the future more people learn more about it. But what's really great is I think with social media and more web comics and things like that, it feels like people are becoming more open to original English manga creators, which is really fantastic, especially with that new Shonen Jump app that's recently come out, which is encouraging creators from other countries. So that's what I think.
Okay, so well, arguably OEL has become more of a popular topic based on the fact that, I mean, the core the core manga is where it's come from. I mean, is obviously getting more traction.
Mm.
But OAL in and of itself, I mean, what do you think this is? Do you think this would ever even evolve into its own style or flavor of a medium, or will this stay like a fan-based community of sorts?
That's a very interesting question. I mean, manga as a genre in Western countries is more usually focused on as a graphic novel form. It would be very interesting if manga kind of merged with that in those English speaking countries, for it to become something where there's a new original English style of telling manga. That would be very interesting. And at the rate it's going, it honestly could get towards that, which I think would be exciting for English speaking creators anywhere.
So, what do you think is, like, for you at least? What do you think manga is? Because I've seen, like, people try to, like, they remix different ways. Like, some people will say, and I mean, I honestly, I want to make sure I say this for anybody watching out there. When I'm phrasing this question, I'm not an authority on manga. We might talk about it, but we're not claiming to be, an authority, because we're just visitors in this culture of manga. But um, what do you define manga to be? Is it something that's like uniquely a Japanese experience? Meaning like something that can only be told by a Japanese creator, or is it something that that if you take aspects of the medium, you can call it manga, or like what we call OEL manga.
I think manga. I think manga is something that not only describes the style itself, but also the way of storytelling. So manga as the storytelling is, of course, the means of Japanese comic books. But the style itself, I think it can also describe the style of manga in the black and white drawings and the way the characters are drawn. So I honestly think it can have two meanings. It can describe the way of storytelling, but it can also describe the style as well.
Okay. So you base it mainly on the style and the storytelling, essentially.
Yeah, yes, I really
Okay,
think you can do both things. Yeah.
What do you call that, Nico? The Kiko? I can't think of exactly how it goes, but I know it's Araki, Hirohiko Araki. He the creator of JoJo. I know he referenced the formula in his book, the How to write manga or something like that. I can't remember the exact title of the book right now, so forgive me out there. But are you familiar with what I'm talking about by any chance? Or
I haven't actually seen that book, but it sounds really good. I'll definitely have to check that one out.
Okay. Let me see here. I'm actually curious. What is the name of that book? Hold on, I'm gonna look it up real quick. Let's see here. Manga in Theory and Practice. That's what it is. The Craft of Creating Manga. I had to look it up real fast. Okay. Yeah, that book I recommend, for anybody out there. I think it's it's a pretty standard book. It's, I think it kind of gives a good overview, but let me see here. Okay. So, when it comes to writers trying to find new challenges, and trying to be able to like develop, like as a starting, like starting off, their first time, getting into the whole manga medium or whatever, do you think that they should just start off by like trying to write, like, for example, like short stories, that aren't even, and not even think about it like, let's say it's a manga? Or do you think that somebody should, how would I say, enter into the manga medium, as basically, like a manga creative? So basically try to write it with that same formula that you see in manga, that, like the same formula that Araki, uses, references in his book, the one that I just mentioned, that people consider to be the Japanese storytelling. Do you think that they should do it from that standpoint, or do you think they should just try to go in and just see what they can spitball and throw on a page?
There we go. It was pronounced Kisho Tenketsu.
Okay, I knew it was something. It was Key Show something. I couldn't remember the exact thing. I just had it internalized. But anyway, Yeah.
I think it's all about finding the approach that works for each creator. And for some people, that method of Japanese writing may suit better. For other people, they may prefer to take a different approach. But I think when it comes to creating a manga or any format, a manga, a comic, or a graphic novel, where it's a balance of art and writing, it's really important to understand both writing and art and then to find the balance. In my videos, I don't typically talk about the Kito Shin. Sorry. I don't typically talk about the Japanese writing style, but that's because I want to make it approachable to an English speaking audience and to help them find their own approach and methods to learning about it. But I think when people are learning the techniques on their own, it's important to first understand what they really want to gain from it, whether they want to create a really complicated story. And if they want to create a complex story, I think it's important to practice the writing techniques and learn more about it. And if they want to also balance that with really good artwork, they need to work on the artwork as well. And then when it comes to turning it into a story with the artwork and the writing together, I think it's important to consider what style of storytelling they really want to present. And if they want it to be a very authentic manga style, then it's important to research the Japanese methods of storytelling. And if they want to present it more like a graphic novel style, then they may prefer to learn more about those types of techniques and present it in that way. Because even though manga, graphic novels, and comics all are stories told through artwork, they all present the story in very unique ways.
Okay. I'm not sure if I answered already, but what any works you're currently working on in the background?
There actually is. Well, I've been working on a larger manga project for a while, but I'm actually currently working on a web manga project, which I'm really excited to start releasing soon, which is going to be available on my website. So I'm really looking forward to that. But overall, in the near future, I'm looking forward to releasing some more works. But overall, I was focusing on a larger scale manga project, but I realized that before I release that, which is a very important project to me, there's a few other projects that I want to release first, and I'm excited to share some of those soon, hopefully in even within this month.
I was almost gonna ask you if you had like a book you could show us right now of it or whatever, like, but obviously I know you just say you don't have it ready. But I'm looking forward to that. I know one of the things that I'm also kind of curious about is conventions. Are you how do you feel about like the convention scene when it comes to comics? Because you have some creators that think, okay, you need to run the con circuit, a million times a year, and that's how you promote your content, or maybe you should just be online. So how do you feel about that exactly?
Again, I think it really depends on what works best for each creator. And for some people, that might be the way to go. Maybe they feel better in a face to face setting where they can talk to people directly. But other people, they may prefer to do things through social media in that method. I
What
think
about you?
for me, in real life, I'm honestly quite an introverted person, and in the future, I think I would like to do conventions. But for the most part, I do like social media, and I like being able to do things at my own pace and to share things online. But certainly in the future, I would enjoy doing things like conventions and that once I probably have a few more works ready to show and things to share, and I think I would do things like that. But I think again, it depends on each creator and the way they really want to share their stories.
Okay. Okay.
Mm.
Let's see here. I know we have a few more comments that have come through, so I want to make sure I address these. Looks like we have another one from Isaac, the webcomic creator. I've been trying to develop the same project since 2014, and people are too easily impressed by my determination. I didn't like shonen anime growing up, but isekai anime has a lot of potential. My personal art style is more so cartoony with manga eyes, a bit like Studio Trigger, I suppose. I'm genuinely curious about what separates manga storytelling from comic book storytelling. Okay. I guess that's a question right there. What do you think separates manga storytelling from comic book storytelling?
I think when it comes to manga, there's a really strong focus on the characters' emotions and the way those feelings are shown through the story. It feels like in manga, there's a lot of times when a lot is revealed through the characters' body language and their reactions to things. When it comes to comics, it feels like there is a lot more in general. I'm not talking about all comics, but in many cases, it feels like there's a lot more action on the pages. And in more cases, it feels like the method of storytelling and paneling is very different. Manga on its own, of course, is something that can be easily picked up and carried around with you and read at any time. And comics are like that too, but comics obviously follow more of a series structure, like on a longer scale. And it feels to me like the paneling and the pacing for a comic book is quite different from manga.
Okay, okay. All right. Let's see here. 1 second. Okay, so really quick, we have got to make our quick little announcement or plug-in to make sure that you check out the Honeycomb Hideout. For those of you guys who aren't familiar with the Honeycomb Hideout, if you enjoy anything related to geek culture, talking about even controversial topics in the community, hot topics, whether it be even like DC, Marvel, and what's going on with the DCEU, this is the podcast you're going to want to talk or you're going to listen to, and you're going to want to be involved with the Honeycomb Hideout. You can find it on Spotify, Apple TV, any podcast platform, you name it. It's all out there, guys. We'll go ahead and put a link to it so you guys can check it out. But think Howard Stern for geeks. That's the best way to think of the Honeycomb Hideout if you know Howard Stern. But with that being said, let's get back to our show.
All right. So going back to it, OEL obviously has this. Obviously, it looks like it's got a bit of a brighter future going for it. I mean, it's obviously the topic, but would you? What do you think is kind of holding it back now? I mean, why are we not seeing like an evolution there where we're already in a place where we're like, all right, we're our own group thing. We're understood and we are industrialized. We've got projects coming out. I mean, yes, we're already kind of seeing that with Viz's originals, that's coming out. So I mean, obviously we're starting to see some headway, but why were we already there? Let's say 5 years ago. What's holding us back?
So I'm sorry, could you
The
please
original
repeat?
question is what's holding OEL back from being understood as its own industry?
I think the main thing that holds it back, especially in English-speaking countries, is that there's still this uncertainty around whether English speakers can create manga or not. And I think that's the major thing that's holding it back. There's still this stigma that people may think that English speakers can't create manga, it's only a Japanese thing. But I honestly think that it's a form of storytelling. And I think anyone who wants to create the story or present in that way is able to do that. But in regards to what's holding it back, I think it's just getting those stories out there and getting it exposed. And there's so many different ways of storytelling. And it just feels to me like if that method of storytelling became more popularized, if more people talked about it or had the courage to share those stories with others, I think it would slowly over time become more popular. And even though it's becoming more popular now, I think if there were more anime created from original English language manga, I think that would help to popularize it. But also, if it became more popular on other platforms as well in an original manga style, I think that would help to make OEL a lot more popular around the world, and it would become something that is more recognized in English speaking countries.
Okay, then let me piggyback that off a little bit more then. So obviously it's already a popular topic, let's say here in the West, as far as our communities within anime and manga is concerned. But we don't really see it where you got box office Hollywood based off of OEL manga, really, right? if you've seen some of our prior episodes, you know, a lot of folks will say the reason we're not really there yet is because a lot of the folks in the OEO community don't tackle their stories with a sense of originality. It's, you know, it's not as much of a yeah, there is a stigma with some of us in the West, but that doesn't seem to be the common answer as to why we're right there yet. I mean, you could look at some of the OEO works, and a vast majority of them you could say arguably look like something from home movies. I don't know if you remember home movies from Adult Swim back then, but their design looked like.
Actually, I'm curious before you even say that, like, because obviously I know, and I'm making a big assumption here, so you can correct us if we're wrong. But I'm assuming that you grew up in Australia as well, or is that okay? I didn't want to assume. You know, did you guys have Adult Swim at all? I'm just curious, like, like Toonami, like Cartoon Network, Toonami, like Adult Swim. I don't know.
As far as I'm aware, it wasn't really a big thing. I do believe Adult Swim was on TV at some point. They don't really have that though, but I admit I don't really watch a whole lot of TV in general, so I'm not honestly sure. I'm more of a book reader, but I do know that there are Cartoon Networks on there, but it's usually not Adult Swim, and there's not many anime on TV. There is ABC Me, which used to be ABC3, and they used to have a lot of anime, which is one of the things that I did watch, which got me started. I saw anime on there, and I'm like, what is this? This is cool. But there's not really a whole lot of anime on Australian TV. It'd be nice if there was some more, but there's still very few. So
okay. So I didn't want you to get mixed up with the home movies reference, because it's literally there was a show that I don't know, it's kind of taking us off, but I know everybody else out there, probably anybody who's from the US knows home movies, but
I haven't heard of that.
Very let's say very interesting designs. I mean, but obviously for its plot structure, it worked. So you can say the storytelling in and of itself there basically is what carried that. I obviously going back to it, OEL, you see a lot of people in their drawings and whatnot. I mean, drawings are a bit home movie-ish or subpar at best. But as opposed to home movies, some would argue that the reason like their the plot structures isn't at that level is because they're lacking originality. When they throw out their plots, they're not pulling from their own experiences. They're pulling from basically what they believe is right based off of the series they've read or watched from Japan, or Shonen Jump in particular. I mean, what's your opinion on that?
What's my opinion on that? So I'm sorry, what was the question?
What's your opinion on that answer as to why people are saying OEL is not there as its own standalone medium in the industry? Yeah, because your answer to that was that there's a stigma against obviously the West, and that our ideas just aren't recognized like that. But if you look at our past episodes, many would claim that's a smaller part of the bigger issue, is that most of us in OEL don't pull from originality. What is your opinion on that?
It feels to me like it really depends on the creator and the way they're telling the story, but there are some that I think look at common cliches or tropes. But the thing is, if someone wants to turn that into a unique story, it's about putting their own spin on those ideas and presenting it in a more unique way. I think it's a bit too broad to say that OEL stories don't have originality, because I think everyone can present ideas in a unique way. But I think more people should be looking at how they can tell that story in their own way through the characters and be willing to express themselves through that. And I hope that in the future, when it comes to things like OEL, I hope more people will be able to look at those ideas and concepts and feel the confidence to try and express it in their own ways. Because I think in many ways, and I understand this too, because this is how I was when I was 10 and I first watched Inuyasha. When I first watched stories like that, and I read manga, especially some of the first ones I read was things like Sailor Moon manga. When I was at that age, there were many times I wrote stories that were very similar to that. And that was mainly because that was my own way of looking at the things I enjoyed and wanting to tell those stories. And I think for people who are becoming inspired by those stories and wanting to begin telling them in their own unique ways, I think there has to be a time at the very beginning when they might be creating stories that are similar, that are very inspired by those. But then I think if that creator wants to branch out and create something new, something that will stand apart from that, I think they need to look at the concepts they really like and then combine it into something new, to creating a new story. So to answer that question, I think it's fine in the early stages to take inspiration and make things that are similar to already existing stories in the early stages when they're gaining inspiration. But once they become a more knowledgeable writer or an artist, I think it's important to step aside from that and try creating something that not only combines the techniques that you already enjoy, but also new concepts and storylines that can help you to stand apart from others. That's what I think.
Fair enough. At what point do you think do you think the artist or writer in question reach that serious point? Is it after they work with several groups? Is it after they work with an official company on a project, on the freelance side, or they work on a team with something official? Is it after they just put out their first work? Give us a benchmark here.
I think to get to that point, it's when they begin reading stories and they are able to create a story that's outside of that. So basically, in the early stages, if you're looking at other manga or anime out there and you begin creating a story that seems too similar to that, then maybe you should be focusing more on creating shorter stories or shorter manga with your own ideas before moving into a larger series. I think it's all about timing. And I think there are many cases when you might want to jump into a big project early on, but if you aren't ready to create that, that may end up becoming too close to a series you already like. You may think, I really want to create a really long running manga about pirates, and then all of a sudden you're creating something that's a bit similar to One Piece. And that might be because you don't have enough ideas or experience on your own to turn it into a unique story. But once you get more experience, you might be able to go, I'm going to create a shorter series about pirates, but it's going to be set in a more fantasy world, and it's going to have all these different aspects to it. It's going to be more about dragons and this. And so I think once you begin creating shorter stories or shorter manga and comics, and you start thinking about how you can tell stories in unique ways, you can look at any concept and think about how you can turn that into a unique idea.
Okay.
I like the key in that you said on experience, like people having basically forming more experiences in their life, that makes you a better writer. Like when it comes to like light novels, like in between like light novels and manga storytelling or whatever. Actually, which do you prefer to do? I mean, obviously you do you do both, but do you have a preference, or do you have seasons where maybe you prefer to do one over the other? Like maybe it changes up depending on, I don't know, the time of the year, or maybe, like right now I'm more into doing this or that. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think for me, manga is always my preferred one, because when I was first learning to draw, I would make these little one-page manga. They were quite poorly drawn and quite poorly written, but I loved creating them. And so I think in those early stages, that's really encouraged my love for manga creating. And I think I would honestly say I prefer manga creating because I like the way that you don't have to honestly say everything. There are ways and times you can show characters' emotions or expressions in order to show a reaction. And there are many times too, especially with the new project I'm currently working on, which I'm hoping to release by the end of this month. There are many times when I've already got the written script and I begin drawing it, and then all of a sudden it feels as though the story has basically created itself in some ways. Like it turns into a different direction than what I had intended. Sometimes I'll draw the character's expression or body language in a different way than what I had anticipated. And In the future, I do want to create more light novels, but I think my favorite means of storytelling is in the manga formats.
Now I noticed you also, and I think this might have been your first YouTube video. I believe is when you did some original poetry on the
Mm.
world's canvas. I believe that was like
Mm.
your original poem, and you were drawing Rapunzel while doing that. So I guess what my question is with that is like, is your goal to also take a lot of the poems that you have and basically turn them, into like kind of like an anthology project? I'm just kind of curious, like, do you plan on kind of making it into like an anthology, where you have all your different poems kind of together, but as manga stories?
That's definitely something I probably would want to do in the future. I feel
Mhm.
like now I'm more invested in storytelling, so if I was to do something like that, I would probably create short stories with illustrations with them. But in the future, I do think I'd like to do something with the poetry, yes.
So going kind of going back to Oyo here, the one of the other issues that was brought up that might be hindering them from making that transition is the lack of guidance and mentorships. Uh, like basically from uh, from the creators of old who were originally at OEO, you could consider we're in a wave two phase, and we're not really getting a lot of a tutelage or to know how to properly structure a story or somewhere to go to where we learn how to properly do sequential work versus the fine arts that was typically popular here in the West. Uh, but then some would counter argue that comics still exist. Where are they as far as helping this out? It's at least the groundwork. So, I mean, what are your thoughts as far as why we lack the guidance?
I think a lot of it is that there's not really many resources to learn about it to begin with. And all the videos I create are things I've learned myself through my own experiences because I just write, I write so much. And so all the stuff I end up showing is stuff I've learned about myself and things that I've learned not to do and things that I've learned can help. But the thing is, it feels to me like comic or manga creating, in my opinion, is a very intuitive process. It's something that's quite different from every creator. And for some people, one approach might work, but for other people, a different approach might work. And the fact that it's a combination of art and writing makes it a difficult medium to teach because in order to learn how to create manga and comics, you first need to have a good understanding of artistic basics and then also writing basics in order to then bring it together. So it's something that I think can be difficult to be taught in like a curriculum way where there's a step-by-step approach saying do this, do this, do this, do this. It's kind of something that both need to be merged together and balanced in order to create the story. But I do hope in the future there will be more ways of learning how to create those things. But the thing is, a lot of it really depends on each writer and the styles they're going for. There is a basic approach to it, but beyond that, a lot of it comes to each creator and how they want to tell the story.
Okay, I mean, so we so the counter that I actually would say that there is I mean there was a process at least that worked as far as how to train folks and get it out there, because obviously the first wave existed, and if you I mean you probably have seen all the series that were popular in the West during the 90s and early 2000s. It seemed like when first wave OEL was really trying to get out there. I mean it was becoming successful. I mean they more so failed due to just due to some kind of let's say silly mistakes that happened, but it had nothing to do with a lack of skill per se. It was so what I'm wondering is what was the disconnect? Why didn't we get that guidance there? And even if we cut that off, we still have Marvel, DC, talented folks who still know how to do the basis of sequential art. And we were now seeing also that a lot of what Western comics did. The manga in Japan, it's starting to look like the sequential works over there. If you saw that discussion with Kofi, they got it from the West with our comics. So why? So there is a disconnect as far as OEO as we know, as far as it being inspired from manga, but there's also a disconnect as far as not reaching out, or maybe a neglect or ignorance with some of the professionals as far as sequential works and on the comics end. So why aren't we getting anything from either side here?
I think the main thing is the fact that when it comes to manga, especially in those earlier stages, it can feel very hard to know what happens after you've created the manga. And there are publishing opportunities for graphic novels and comic creators. Not many of you are in Australia, it's kind of hard to find that. But the thing is, I think when it comes to OEL manga, I think people are uncertain on what happens after they've created the manga. They realize that they might create the manga, but then where do they go with that? It can be hard to publish and get that manga out there if you're not in a Japanese country or if you don't speak Japanese, which is why I think it's more important than ever that OEL becomes more popular and there do become more opportunities for that. But I think the reason why there's a disconnect is that in many English speaking countries, there's still this uncertainty around manga. There's still this feeling like it's hard to get that manga out there, to get it published or produced or sold in bookstores. I think if that changed, I think there would be less of disconnect and more people would feel more confident in going into that format.
Okay. All right. You want to go through the comics and we'll roll into the last two questions?
Let's go ahead and roll into it. So, okay, the next comment that we have, actually, we have a few comments that have come through since. Let's see here. From Isaac, the webcomic creator. I particularly enjoyed Tenchi Muyo, which was on Toonami. Man, I love Tenchi Muyo. I'm not even gonna lie. Tenchi Muyo, like that was one of those. I would say that's like the real, well, I guess isekai, or if you want to say, what else do they call it? Sword Art Online is kind of like the same thing. I don't know if you call it ecchi or whatever you want to call it. You guys get where I'm going with it. Sean Tucker, what's up, Sean? Irvin, Nico, thank you for bringing interviews like this to the manga communities. I want to make sure I go ahead and give a special shout out to Sean, because Sean is also the admin of the International Manga Society. So
hi,
definitely.
Sean. Thanks for coming.
Sean, you got a call on or something, because with a name like that over here, trying to low key be Sean Tucker. I don't know, man. I got my eyebrow raised.
Okay, the next comment that we have from and I want to make sure I'm pronouncing this correctly, so I apologize in advance if I mispronounce your name, but I'm going to try to get it as good as I can. Tasimba Makoni, but originally doesn't necessarily exist because everything that has been completely exhausted. It's more of taking a new approach to a certain idea that creates the illusion of originality. So that's in reference to earlier when we were talking about originality. Anybody who's coming in a little bit later. That's probably why it's hard to get into the industry, especially entertainment. All right. From Isaac, the webcomic creator, I agree. I don't believe 100% originality is possible. My heart is on the concept of creating a webcomic, but I could feasibly write a light novel, I guess. Out of isekai anime in particular, I admit that I like storytelling style of Skeleton Knight in Another World. I don't think I've ever heard of that story, but interesting.
I haven't seen that, but it sounds cool. I want to check that one out. That sounds awesome.
All right, and then we have another comment from Tasimba Makoni. It's also difficult with the fact that people still have HV, the misconception of what manga is. So if you get hate for making it when you're not Japanese, basing an entire culture on comics. Okay.
I agree with that.
Now, before we get into the final couple questions or whatever, I do want to say one of the things that I think is really interesting about a lot of stuff that I've seen, at least that you post in terms of your art style and what you've gone through, is just kind of like how much help you tried to provide the community. So I do have to applaud you, for
Yeah,
trying
thank
to.
you.
Yeah, definitely. Now let's see here. All right, let's go into these final few questions. We said two, but really three. Um, so I do want to know, do you have any rivals?
Do I have any rivals?
Yes, we all, like we got to go with like just like in anime, just like in manga, everybody got a rival,
You're making me feel like I'm in a shonen anime. I'm looking around. There's about to be like a battle scene.
So we got to ask, we ask everybody, or even if it's not a rival, just on a serious tip, as professionals, do you have anybody who, motivates you creatively in a positive way, and you guys motivate each other, whether it be another creative or someone else in the industry,
You're competitive with. Yeah.
Yeah, essentially.
Well, I certainly wouldn't say I have any rivals, but I do like taking inspiration from my favorite creators. And of course, that would have to be Rumiko Takahashi. I've been a big fan of her for so long. I mean, she was the one that kind of got me started here. So, but honestly, instead of seeing other creators as rivals, I like just kind of seeing what they're doing. I mean, I think it's important to lift other creators up, which is what I like doing with my videos. I think it's important for us to encourage each other and inspire each other as well, because I don't think there's any point in seeing other people as rivals when we can learn so much from each other, and everyone's going on their creative journey. We might all be at different stages of the journey, but we're also learning and creating things. Oh, I also just remembered, I don't know why I remembered that, but one of my other massive inspirations is also Ryukishi07. He's the writer of Yumineko, and you may have heard of it, Higurashi.
Oh
But
yeah, Higurashi.
he's like a legendary writer, in my opinion. I've collected all of his manga. But he's a big inspiration as well. So, but that's really the way I see things.
You know what? This is kind of a sidebar question I'm going to ask, but do you think that the comics industry, as a whole, has been more of a? Do you think that it's been getting better for um, women in the industry and being more, inclusive, or do you feel like it's become more distant? I've seen some things lately that have been kind of unpleasing on how I feel like women have been treated in the industry. So I'm kind of curious from your perspective on how you feel about that.
It's a very interesting question. I think when it comes to women in the industry, I think there should be more opportunities for women to be encouraged more in the industry. I think when it comes to manga creating, I think it's less so than comics, because there are so many really well-known female manga creators, whereas it feels like in comics, it feels like maybe there's less recognition for women in that industry, even though there are amazing women comic creators in that industry. It feels like they should get more recognition, but in general, it feels like maybe in every industry there is a little bit of judgment behind it. And it feels like, as someone that creates YouTube videos about it, I don't see a lot of other female manga creators out there, and I'd love to see more of them. I'd love to see more people that discuss creating manga and comics and get it out there more. It feels to me like in any industry, in anything you're creating, even when it comes to just manga and comics, regardless of your gender, there's always people that are going to judge you or try and stop you from doing that thing. I think it's important to try and stand beyond that and instead put the biggest focus on telling that story the way you want it to be. And whether there may be judgment, regardless of your gender or what you're creating, I think it's important to stand beyond that and stand for the things that you believe in and the story that you want to create. And I think if you do that, I think you're able to stand above that, even though it's hard and even though there might be judgment. I think it's important to stand beyond that and focus what matters most to you.
Okay. Now, if you had to pick someone in the industry, like a professional, and it can't be any of your, like, I'm gonna say your two most major, influences. It can't be them, but any other, like pro out there that you had to work with, on a collaboration. who would you pick? And what would it be? Would you be the writer or would they be the artist? Or would it, or vice versa? Would you be the artist? Would they be the writer?
If I were to work with I need to think about that one. That's an interesting question. If I were to work with someone, it's hard to say what I would do, because when it comes to me drawing, I mean, I love drawing and writing, but as an artist, I'm still working on getting my speed up with drawing the pages, which is something so important in manga and comic creating. It's really important to speed up the process. And for me, that's something I still need to work on. So it's hard to say whether I would draw or write, but I honestly love both parts of the process. Now, as to who I would work with, who I would want to work with. Honestly, I would probably say Mark Crilley, because when I was like 13 or 14, I really looked up to Mark Crilley, and I was watching all of his videos and drawing and everything. I remember a really long time ago, this was way back, I don't even think this video is still there on my YouTube channel, maybe it's on my old channel, but I drew a picture of his character from Mickey Falls, and he commented on my video, and little 14-year-old me was just like over the moon. I was like, he noticed me.
It's funny, like Mark Crilley is literally, from our area. Like Mark Crilley, I mean, we never met Mark Crilley, but Mark Crilley is from Michigan, so, which is like the state that we're in. So pretty cool. But okay. Now let's see here. The last question. You know what? I'm usually always the one that does this. So Nico, I think you should be the one to do the honors this time. Ask the grandiose question.
I think I did it past 3 episodes, but yeah, sure. No, it's not. All right, ladies and gentlemen, guys and girls, Z's and Zers, and those of you pronouns out there. I'm gonna wrap it up tonight with the traditional one. So, Midnight Cross. What is your ultimatum? In other words, as we've traditionally, or as we adopted after that Great Adventures movie, what is your end game? Where is all this going? After all is said and done, with your work, craft, and you polish things, I mean, where are you taking all of this? Are
you going to snap us out of existence with your next work? Are you gonna bring us all back, into a creative wonderland? What are you going to do? What's your end game? What do you see for your future? What do you, when you're, old and, you've looked back on everything, how do you want it to look?
I think I want to create many stories and present those stories through many formats. But for me, I want to also balance that with helping people in their own creative journeys. That's something that's always been really important to me. And what's really interesting to me is when I started, I didn't really think it would go the way it did. I mean, I kind of just started making videos because they were a way of me helping get my own thoughts out there. I would learn something and then I'd be like, I'm going to make a video about this. And I was really quite surprised to see that it helped other people too, not just me. So in the future, as well as telling these stories and getting those stories out there, whether it's through manga or light novels or other forms of storytelling, I also want to continue sharing videos and helping people in their own creative journeys, because I think everyone has an amazing story idea, but I think it's all about getting that story idea out there and getting it onto paper. And so to me, I mean, my catchphrase in my videos is to turn your manga into a masterpiece. And to me, that has many meanings. It's not only about the process behind creating manga or light novels, but honestly, I think everyone has a masterpiece, and I want to help others get to that point and show that masterpiece. So that's really my goal. If I looked back on things, I'd want to be able to know that I help many people to be able to get their stories out there. And I've also got many of my own stories to be able to share with others, to be able to tell those stories and also see the other stories that people want to share.
Okay, well, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Now, there's one question. I don't want to ignore it that somebody came in. So we'll come in with this last one, even though that technically is the last question. But
that's so good. I'm happy to answer questions.
Tasimba Makoni does have a question. Midnight, how was your experience making your first story, and how did you get that initial hurdle?
Well, my initial story was actually way more complicated than I could create at that age. So I've created a few manga. My original manga was something that I created when I was about 13, and it was something that had a really complicated storyline. And at that age of 13, I had all these really big plans for creating it, and the way the story would be. But at that young age, I didn't really know how I could get that story out there onto paper. So that story, which was called Reflections Through Time, was something that was really, really precious to me. But as I got older, I got to the point where I was like, I'm not experienced enough to tell this story. And eventually, after I've released a few more stories at my current age, I want to go back and relook at that story. But to me, there wasn't really a hurdle about creating the story. It was more like understanding that at that age, I didn't have enough experience to be able to present the story the way I wanted to. And I think it's important understanding that in your own stories too. It's important to know if you're experienced enough to create that. And if you still need to learn new things, I recommend starting with shorter stories or shorter manga to get more ideas before tackling that larger project. And I know there will come a time when I'm going to look at that and tell that story in the way I want it to be told. But that's the way my very first story went. And that's the way I like to look at things. I like to look at things like their experiences, their learning methods and techniques, and I can always learn from them and grow as a creator.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I think that was a really good answer. I do want to say very quickly, to everybody, who's been watching the show, I hope you guys have enjoyed this. Now, before we head on out of here, you know, um, you know, tell us where we can find you. I mean, we put some of your links in the chat, but we obviously there may be more. So tell us where we can find you.
Well, of course, I'm on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/c/MidnightXcross. I'm also on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I've also got my own website, midnightscross.com, and I have my course website through that as well, where I have more specific and detailed lessons and tutorials available on my course website.
Okay, well, there you guys have it. Before you guys head out really quick, if you do enjoy videos like this and you enjoy, interviews, hear about manga creators, to know about the community and what's at hand, make sure you subscribe to Shining Otaku. Make sure that you hit that bell so you actually know when the video comes out. We're also on Facebook too, so you can find us on there. And if you're someone who likes to listen to stuff on a car ride, you can actually find us on Spotify as well under Shining Spotlight. So you can listen to all these episodes. For all my Shining Spotlight listeners out there who are on Spotify, shout out to y'all as well. And we have a project coming up pretty soon called Killbox, which is our next manga project that's coming out, our hip-hop related battle rap series. So you'll want to make sure you check that out when that actually comes out. And that should be sometime, I would say, in the beginning of next year. So make sure you follow the channel for those updates. With that being said, thank you again, Midnight Cross, for coming on today. Our next episode will be with Sherrod Jackson from the comic Darby, and he also did the comic Semantic Lace, which was one of the more original from the first generation of OEL. So you want to make sure you guys be here for that interview. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching. Thank you, Shining Lots. Thank you again, Midnight Cross,
for having me.
Thank you. And we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Thank you so much.
Catch y'all later.